We're on the Mishnah on Kuf Daled Amud Aleph. Boiskin. Talk the Mishnah. Boiskin melach agabi kevesh. You can crumble and then spread the salt on the ramp of the Mizbeach. B'shvil shelo yachliku. In order that people should not slip. The Kohanim, that is, should not slip. The Rashi says, because the Mizbeach is outdoors and it rains, it becomes slippery. The Rambam, other Rishonim say that they have so many karbonas that they place on the kevesh before they put it on the Mizbeach itself, and the fats makes it very slippery, so they have to put salt. It shouldn't be slippery. So in the Beis HaMikdash, they're allowed to spread out the salt. Not as an issue with spreading salt on the ground. Usually, when you spread salt outdoors, the issue that could be is that you're mashve gumais. If there could be any little holes in the ground and you flatten it out, that could be a tilde of the malacha of baina or chayrish. So you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. But in the Beis HaMikdash, they weren't geyser and you're allowed to do so. We'll see more about this in the Gemara. They could fill also the water in the Beis HaMikdash mi Beir HaGoyla. There was a pit of water that was called Beir HaGoyla because the Yidden came up from Golus and they second Beis HaMikdash and they created this Beir for water. Mi Beir HaGodel, there was another Beir that was called the large Beir. Bagilgal, it was done with a wheel that they would bring up the water. B'Shabbos, it could be done on Shabbos. The Gemara as well will discuss what the chiddush of this is. Be'er hakar, there's a well which is called hakar. The Gemara will explain what that is, and this is not inside the Beis HaMikdash, and you're not allowed to use it on Shabbos to fill water with a wheel, but on Yom Tov they will matter that you're allowed to use it, as we'll see the details in the Gemara.
You want to do the conference call?
So, the first thing is...
Where was Be'er HaGoyla in Beis HaMikdash?
Remember the code?
Be'er
HaGoyla was in the Beis HaMikdash, correct, and Be'er HaGodel was in the Beis HaMikdash. Be'er HaKar was not in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, Zok the Gemara. Rami le'Rav Ike mi Pashreine le'Rava. So he asked the following question. Tanan, over here we learned in the Mishnah, Boiskin melach agabi hakevesh. You can spread out the salt on the ramp, b'shvil shelo yachliku, so people shouldn't slip. So the Mishnah is saying that this could only be done in the Beis HaMikdash, but bedin eloi, outside of the Beis HaMikdash it can't be done. Question is, Veramini, I'll ask you a contradiction of a Braisa. It says in the Braisa, if you had the rain and it became very muddy in the courtyard outside. So what do? Mevi teven, you bring straw, umeradeba, and you spread it out so that it shouldn't be so muddy. So what do you see? That you're allowed to spread out straw because of the muddiness in the ground. So why does it say that regarding spreading salt, it's only allowed on the kevesh and the Beis HaMikdash? Answers the Gemara, it's a different thing. Shani teven deloi mafdelei. When it comes to straw that you're spreading out, the person is not annulling it, meaning he's not planning on leaving it there. He's going to put it down while it's muddy, and then he's going to take it. He's going to use the teven. Rashi says the teven could be used for other things. He's going to use it to make cement out of it for buildings or to feed animals with it, whatever it is, but he's not planning on leaving the cement there. Whereas when you spread out salt on the ground, so you're planning on leaving there, so that's a problem. So now Ravacha Bereder says to Ravashi, Hi Melach, the salt that he's spreading, Hey Chidami, what are we talking about? If he's planning on leaving it there, so then in the Beis HaMikdash over here in the Mizbeach, he's adding a code of salt to the kevesh, to the ramp, and he's adding to the structure of the Mizbeach. Uksiv, the pasuk says, Akol b'ksav miyad Hashem alai hiskil. Everything in the Mizbeach, the measurements, the sizes are all made exact. You can't add anything. So even during the week, you shouldn't be allowed to spread any salt on the ramp of the Mizbeach if he's planning on leaving it there. If he's not planning on leaving it there, then it's going to be considered a chatzitza, meaning the Kohanim that are doing the Aveda, they're walking up the ramp, they're not walking on the Mizbeach. They're walking on salt, on a coat of salt that's on top of the ramp. When a Kohen does the Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash, if he doesn't have his feet on the ground, there's a chatzitza. So over here, how could you spread salt if you plan on taking it away? It doesn't become part of the kevesh itself, it's a chatzitza. Answers the Gemara, when they're walking up the ramp, they're bringing the limbs of the animal to be makriv on the Mizbeach, and that's not an Aveda. The Aveda is the Shchita maybe, the Zrike, and the Aktara, but not walking with the limbs to the Mizbeach, that's not an Aveda. Fragt the Gemara v'loi, taking the limbs and walking up to the Mizbeach is not an Aveda. So it says, v'hikriv, that the Kohen brings it. What does v'hikriv mean? This is the Aveda that the Kohen brings the Evarim on the ramp of the Mizbeach. So you see here that bringing the limbs onto the Mizbeach is an Aveda. So how can you spread the salt there? So the Gemara says, they would only spread the salt in the morning before they brought the wood onto the Mizbeach, and therefore the wood is not, bringing the wood on the Mizbeach is not an Aveda, and then they can have the salt there. But afterwards the salt would be gone, and they would bring the karbanis on, and the salt wouldn't be a chatzitza. So the salt was only there when they brought the wood up to the Mizbeach in the morning.
The reason was, you said before, because it got fatty and this and
Yeah, and chanami. So I guess from the day before, so they cleaned it up and they put the salt there, and then afterwards they had to make sure there shouldn't be salt there. It shouldn't be a chatzitza. Yeah. What the shaila is, if it's not being left there, if you're taking it off, so then the whole pshat the Gemara said before, that on Shabbos, the reason why this is a problem is because you're leaving it there. Gemara said that the tevem, when you put down the straw, removing the straw, so even if it's muddy and you put down straw, it's not a problem. So the Gemara said, no, the salt is being put down and it's going to be left there. But now the conclusion of the Gemara is the salt that's being put down is not going to be left there. So what's the problem with putting it down on Shabbos? Going back to the Mishnah? Huh? I guess not. I guess it's so thick that thick salt, real thick salt, huh?
What do you do after take away?
They took it away in order that it shouldn't be a chatzitza. That's what the Gemara is saying here. They couldn't leave it there. So if they took it away, what would be the issue of putting it down on Shabbos? So we'll see in the Hemshcha of the Gemara will now bring another braise where it says that even though they take it away, but still you're not supposed to spread salt outside or spread even straw in a place where it's muddy without a shinui. You have to make a shinui. And over here the chiddush is that it's done without a shinui. As we'll see right now in the continuation of the Gemara.
So Shabbos you couldn't do it.
On Shabbos, in Beis HaMikdash, it could be done without a shinui. That's the chiddush. In the Beis HaMikdash, it could be done without a shinui. Outside the Beis HaMikdash, spreading salt or spreading straw can't be done without a shinui. Darash Rava Chatzah Sheneskalkala b'Meik Shamim Yahweh, courtyard that became very muddy from the rain. Maybe teven, so you bring straw, umiradabai, you spread out. Amalei Rav Papa l'Rav. So Rav Papa tells Rava, but Vatanya in a Braisa, when it says this, it says Keshu Mirada, when he spreads out the straw, Ein Mirada, don't spread it out in your usual way. Loi b'sal v'loi b'kupa, don't have a basket or box of straw and spread out the straw that way. Ela b'shulei kupa, take a broken basket that doesn't have the walls of the basket, just to make a shinui in the way you spread it out. It shouldn't be spread out like it's done during the week, even though this is something, the straw that you spread out, you're not even planning on keeping it there, but it still has to be done with a shinui. That's what it says in the Braisa. So when Rava heard this, Hada oikim Rava amayra alei v'darash. So then Rava sat down in Amayra to say and to darshan about this. Dvarim she'amarti lifneichem. What I've told you, ta eseim b'yadi, is a mistake. This that I said that you could spread it out without a shini is a mistake. Beram kach omre mishum Rabbi Eliezer. This is what was said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Ukeshehu merada. When you spread out the straw, ein merada loy besal. Don't spread it out in the usual way, putting it out from a basket. Just have the bottom of a basket and not a proper basket and spread it out from there. You're not allowed to spread it out in the normal way. You have to make a shinui. So again, like I said, the chiddush is that in the Beis HaMikdash you do not have to make this shinui. It said in the Mishnah that you can fill water. There's a wheel that they had that they brought up the water from this pit of water in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so the question is, what exactly is the issue of filling up water with a wheel? What's the big chiddush over here? So the Gemara is going to go through a whole inyan, and the first assumption of the Gemara is that the issue is that this wheel makes a very loud noise, and the issue is of creating this noise on Shabbos. In fact, the Gemara in Talmud said it made extremely loud noise. So maybe that would be the issue. So first the Gemara starts off with this. Zok the Gemara, Ula ikla lebeirav Menashe. Ula was by Rav Menashe. Asahu Gabra. So he was there for Shabbos, and this person comes on Shabbos, Taraf abava, he's banging on the door. Omar, Menashe says, Man hai. Who is this person that's banging on the door? Lischel gufei, let his body be desecrated, the kamachale l'shabbata, by making such a sound and banging on the door. He's being mechal Shabbos. Amalei Rabbe, so Rabbe says to Menashe, relax, it's okay, you're allowed to bang on the door on Shabbos. Loi osru ela koil shel shir. The problem of making sounds and noise on Shabbos is only if you're making a musical note or something that's a shir. Then there's a gzeira that you might come to make a musical instrument. But just stamp to bang on the door to make a noise is not an issue. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to bring a few different cases regarding this question. Is there an issue of making a sound, of creating a loud sound on Shabbos? Or is it only if you're making a sound which is sort of a musical note? So Abaye asked the question. It says in the Braise, Mailim b'di yoifi, you're allowed to take, this is what they did is, you have 2 barrels. One barrel is, let's say, full of wine, and then you have another barrel which is empty, and you want to transfer the wine from one barrel to another. So they had this straw that went from one barrel to another, and then you would suck out the wine from one barrel to another, and the wine would transfer over through this straw from one barrel to another. So that's allowed to be done on Shabbos. Umatifin miyark l'chayla b'Shabbos. You're allowed to allow the water to come out from a yark. What's a yark? Yark is some kind of a vessel that had little holes in the bottom. But what happens is, when you cover this vessel, because it's airtight, so the liquid that's inside doesn't come out. When you uncover it, so then the liquid comes out from the holes. What's the point of having the liquid come out of the holes? This vessel was on top of some kind of a metal plate. And then when the liquid comes out and it would drip, it would make some kind of a sound. It made a noise. That was this kind of keli that they had. And they were used, so it says there in the Mishnah or in the Braise, it could be used, you can open it up and allow the liquid to come out to make this sound for a sick person on Shabbos. So now the Gemara says, what does this mean? L'chayla in, you're allowed to make this sound with this water that drips out, l'badi, loy, only for a sick person, but not for a well person. Hey Chidami, what is this sound that it's making over here? What's the case talking about? Lav, don't you think the case is the nim? You have a sick person that's awake. The kabay de lissar, he wants to go to sleep. So in order for him, again, the nim, he's falling asleep, that is, the opposite. Again, the nim, he's falling asleep. The kabay de lissar, you want to wake him up. So Rashi says, because he's sick, you don't want to shake him and wake him up aggressively. So they would have this thing that would make a noise to wake him up in a calm way. That's l'chayra the case over here. So what's the point? It says here in the Braise that this can be done for a sick person on Shabbos, but it can't be done for a healthy person. What's the reason? Why not? Shmami, no, can't we learn from here? Oiludi kala aser. Because it makes a sound, you're not allowed to do this on Shabbos. So we see that it doesn't make any musical sound, just any sound. It's not allowed. So the Gemara loy, that's not what it's talking about. The tir, actually it's talking about a person that's awake, the kabay de leinim. He wants to go to sleep. The mishtama ki kala de zimzumi. And the sound that this makes when the water drips out is like, these sounds that they have to help a person go to sleep. These sound machines and these things. Yeah, this is the old-fashioned sound machines to help a person go to sleep. So it's not just stama bang, stama sound. It actually has a certain rhythm to it, and therefore it's not allowed to be done on Shabbos. Eitz, the Gemara brings another case. If you prepare it before Shabbos, if you're allowed to prepare a sound maker before Shabbos, I don't see why not. Maybe, yeah. I'm not 100% sure about that, because there's a halacha. I mean, of course, you're allowed to prepare things from before Shabbos with a Shabbos clock, but things that make sounds, noises, it's a big shaila. L'mashal, if you put on your washing machine or dryer before Shabbos, you're not allowed to have it running after lichtzin in the house.
A sound machine.
This could be a problem.
The sound machine without going off.
The whole Shabbos. Yeah. Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's like an air conditioner. Also makes a pretty loud noise, just as loud as these sound machines. You can keep it on Shabbos. I'm not sure.
There's an app, Shabbos Alarm, which is specifically for Shabbos.
And the alarm goes up. Okay, great. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Eisvei. Ha-meshame peiraisa mepnei ha'ifis. A person is guarding his fruits because of birds, not to eat it. Love, his vegetables in the field, mepnei ha'chaya, because of the animals. Mishame kedarke b'Shabbos, he can guard it like he would usually on Shabbos, just like he does it in the weekday. Ubulvad shelo yisapik, but he shouldn't clap his hands. V'lo yitapeach, shouldn't bang his hands on his heart. V'lo yirakid, he shouldn't stamp with his feet, he shouldn't dance. Kederach shu oisen, shein oisen b'chayil, like a person does during the week to scare away the birds, the animals. Why not? Why can't he clap with his hands or bang with his feet? My time it lav isn't the reason. Don't you think the reason is the kamaylit kala? Because he's creating a sound. The chole ludikala aser, and anytime you create a loud sound is forbidden. So here you see creating a sound, even if it doesn't have a rhythm or a sound of a music, is forbidden. So the Gemara, that's not the reason. If you allow a person to behave the way he would usually to scare away the birds, by clapping, by stamping with his feet, he might forget and pick up a rock and throw it to scare away the birds. So therefore they asked the person not to act this way in Shabbos. So the Gemara, another case, the women that play with walnuts. So Rashi says the way they would play with the walnuts is they had like a flat surface and they would throw walnuts from one side to the other and to see if they could aim the walnuts at each other, and they'd bump into each other. That was the game. So it says over here that it's not allowed to be done on Shabbos. Also, not allowed to play this game on Shabbos. My time, why can't they play with the walnuts on Shabbos? Lav, don't you think the reason is the kamaylit kala? Again, because these walnuts, they bang into each other, they create a sound. That would be the issue. That's not the issue. The issue is that they may come to flatten out a ground to be able to play this game. They could only play it on a flat surface. So if they're going to play this game on the floor, so they're going to look at holes in the ground, they may come to flatten out the surface. That's why it's forbidden. If you're not going to say the reason is because of this, if they play the same game, not with walnuts, but they play it with apples. Again, the apples and the whatever. So, it doesn't make a noise. The apples don't make that noise that the walnuts make. What kind of a sound does it make? So you have to say, like we said, the reason is that the only problem is they might come to flatten out the ground. Now we finally come back to our Mishnah here. What did it say in the Mishnah? So it said in the Mishnah, you're allowed to draw the water with a big wheel to bring up the water in the Beis HaMikdash. So b'miktashim b'medina loy. Why? In my time, what's the reason? Lav, don't you think the reason is Mishum da eludi kala? Because this wheel creates a sound, v'asr, and it's not allowed. Says the Gemara, loy, that's not the pshat in our Mishnah. You know what the reason is? If you allow a person to use this wheel to draw water, so usually a person draws water by hand. How much water could you draw? A little bit to wash your hands, to drink. You can't draw that much water at a time. But if you're allowing a person to draw water with a wheel, so then he can draw a massive bucket of water with this wheel to bring it up. So we're afraid if you allow a person to draw so much water at a time, he'll use it not only to drink and for himself, but he might also use the water to water his garden or to water trees. Where he lived in Mechuzah, he allowed them to fill up water with this wheel, a big bucket of water. Amar, he said, my time it goes to Rabbanon. Why did the Rabbanon say this is not allowed? Because he might come to fill up too much water and then water the garden and the trees. Hacha, where I live here in Mechuzah, there's no garden, there's no place of trees. So there's no problem. It's like he lived in a city, like in an urban area. There's no gardens, there's no issue. But then what happened? Kivin the kachaza. Then he saw the kataro ba kitana. He saw people they had so much water that they drew on Shabbos and they used it to soak their flax in it. Asalahu. So he asked them. He saw that the gzeira applies even over here when there's no gardens and no trees. The next thing it said in the Mishnah, be'er hakar. There's a well that's called hakar. And this is a well that's not in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Mishnah said that you're not allowed to draw from it in Shabbos with a wheel. But on Yom Tiv, they were matter that you're allowed. So first the Gemara wants to know, what kind of a well is this? Mai Be'er Hakar. What's this name? Why is it called Be'er Hakar? What is this? Shmuel says Shmuel, Be'er Shehikru Aleh Dvarim. This is a well that they advanced all kinds of proofs in order to be matter to use this. V'hitiru, and they were matter to use this. As the Gemara is soon going to say, what happened is the Yidden came up to Eretz Yisrael after when they came to build the second Beis HaMikdash, and they needed to be able to use this well water on Shabbos. That's the water that they had. So the Nevi'im or the Chachamim that were there with then the Yidden in that time were matter it, even though usually there's a gzeira, not to be allowed to fill up the water with a wheel from a well, but in that time period the Yidden needed to use it, so they were matter. They allowed them to use it. So that's the Taich Hakar. Hakar was the proofs that they brought to be matter that it should be allowed. On Yontif. It said in the Mishnah on Yontif. Only on Yontif were they makel. So the Gemara, that can't be the reason for the name. The Gemara is not going to retract the pshat of what this story is about, but the name has to have another reason. Why? Meisvei, I'll ask you a question on this. We learned in Abraise, Loi kala bayres hakarais hitiru. Not all bayres hakarais did they permit to use with this wheel. Ela zubulvad. There's only one that they allowed. So now that doesn't fit with the pshat that we just said. Vi amrit, and if you're going to say shehikru dvarim aleha, that there's one well that they said all these proofs to be matter to use it, my zubulvad. What does it say? Only one, that there was others and there's one. You're saying that there's only one well that they were bringing proofs to use. So the Gemara says the taich of the word akar is something else. Elam Rav Nachman beYitzchak be'er mayim chayim. Be'er akar means well water, a wellspring where the water keeps on coming. Shenemar, there's a pasuk where it says kehakir bir meimeha, like a beer, which is a well. It's red beer meimeha, where the water keeps on coming, which is a well water. And that's what we're talking about over here. Now the Gemara brings the story itself. Gufe, going back to the Baraisa we just mentioned. Loi kala bayres, hakarais, hitiru, not all well waters that they allowed to draw from it on Yontiv with a wheel. El zubulvad, there was only one case that they allowed this. Kishal b'nei Goyla, when the people came from Golis, from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, chanu aleh, and they stopped over there in that area, and they needed to use it on Shabbos. The Nevi'im that were amongst them, hitiru lehen, they will matter them to use it on Yontif. V'loi Nevi'im shebeneim, and then it says it wasn't the heter of the Nevi'im, el minig avoisam b'yedeiim. They had a minig from their fathers, from before, that this be'er, this well water could be used. Okay, Rashi says the Nevi'im amongst them were Chagis, Chari, and Malachi.
Says they had a minute. That well was on the way. And
I guess could be this was a well that was on the way to be Eile Regel. They had some minig. Rashi doesn't explain where this minig came from. Minig avisayim ba'oisei habayr, that they would use it. Zok the Mishnah.
The Mishnah about the last Mishnah about not putting down salt because
yes.
It could be opinion. Is there any possibility there could be a problem with the malacha of tanning?
Tanning,
yes.
Similar to when you're ma'abed, that you salt. I don't think it applies though when you put it on the ground. But what should be mentioned is when it's snowing and you want to salt the snow, you can't do that on Shabbos for various reasons. But here's one of them, because you're not allowed to salt the ground, as we said. Zok the Mishnah, sheretz shenimtza b'mikdash. If there's a sheretz that's found in the Beis HaMikdash, koyin moitziyei behem yonei. So the sheretz, of course, is tomei. You want to get it out of the Beis HaMikdash. So what do? The koyin doesn't want to be metame himself, though. There are 8 shrotzim. If you touch them, you become tomei. So if the koyin is going to touch this sheretz, he's going to become tomei. And then he's standing in the Beis HaMikdash. A person that's tomei in the Beis HaMikdash is chayiv kares. So how is he going to get it out? So what does he do? Moitziyei behem yonei. He takes it out with his gartel. He grabs onto it, not directly, he grabs onto it with his gartel, and that's how he takes it out. So Rashi explains, your gartel becomes a rishon l'tumah, and then the gartel will not be metama the person. The halach is, anything that's a rishon l'tumah is only metama food, eichlun mashkin, it's not metama a person. So the gartel is a rishon l'tumah, it's not metama you. So that's how you take it out. Shaloi lishus esatuma. Don't look for any other utensil to take it out. Use your gartel, even though you're making the big day kahuna tameh, so that you could take it out as quickly as possible. Divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Breike. Rabbi Yudah says, "B'tzvas shel eitz." Try to find wooden tongues that are not makabel tumah, because it's considered to be pshutei kli eitz. It doesn't have a area that it could contain anything in it. Try to find that, and therefore you're not going to have to make your gartel tameh. And take it out that way. Why should you go searching for this tongues? And it's gonna take a longer time. You're not gonna be able to take it out of the Beis HaMikdash. Shaloi l'rabei sesatuma. In order not to be marbet tumah, if you're gonna take it with your gartel, you're making your gartel tameh. It's better to find something that will not become tameh when you grab onto it. Sagt the Mishnah weiter. Now this is Bechlal. What we learned until here is not talking about Shabbos. This is Bechlal. Anytime there's a shed, it's found in the Beis HaMikdash. Now the Gemara is going to talk. The Mishnah is going to talk about Shabbos. If you find it on Shabbos, so the sheretz, of course, is muktzeh. You're not allowed to just grab onto it and take it out. But on Shabbos in the Beis HaMikdash, so the Gemara Mishnah now discusses from which section of the Beis HaMikdash are you allowed to take it out. Mina heichal, mina ulam. You can take it out from the heichal, which includes the kodesh and the kodesh hakedoshim, the ulam, umibein ulam lemizbeach. From between the ulam and the mizbeach, you can take it out. Divrei Rab Shimon ben Nanas. Rabbi Kiva says, Kol mokim shechayav and alzadayne kares v'shechgasei chatos misham mitziyin oisai. Any area that if a tamei person walks in there, he's going to be chayev kares and chatos, you can take it out from there. So that includes the entire azara, not only the heichal and the kodesh hakedoshim and so on. V'shar kol hamakaimis, and any other place, which would be, let's say, the ezras nashim, kaifin all of psachter, you just cover it with a pot, with a copper pot, that just cover it until after Shabbos. Rab Shimon says, Makaim shehitiru locha chachamim, in a place that the chachamim gave you a heter. Mishalcha nasnulach. The heter they gave you is from something that is yours. Now what exactly Rab Shimon is referring to, the Gemara will explain. This has no connection to what it said here in the Mishnah. The Gemara will explain. And then Rab Shimon says, Shaloi hitiru lecha ela mishum shvus. They were only matter for you to do something which is awesome in the Rabbana, which is a shvus. They weren't matter to you to do something which is awesome in Atayra. Again, what exactly Rab Shimon is referring with the second half of the statement will be the siyum of the Masechta, as we'll see shortly. Sagt the Gemara, Amar Rav Tavi. That what? So again, that's too. Amar Rav Tavi bar Kisna Amar Shmuel Hamachnes Tamei Sheretz LeMikdash. If a person brings in a vessel which is Tamei from a Sheretz into Beis HaMikdash, Chayiv. He's going to be Chayiv, Karis or Chatas, or bringing in this Tamei Keli into the Beis HaMikdash. However, Sheretz Atzmai, if you bring in a Sheretz itself into the Beis HaMikdash, Potter. Then you Potter. My time or makra, because the pasuk says mizachar va'ad nekeva tishalechu, that a zachar or a nekeva which is tamei has to be sent out of the Beis HaMikdash. What does this mean? Mi sheyesh loy tare b'mikveh. Why does the pasuk say zachar and nekeva? It's talking about a person. A person you could tovel in a mikveh. A person that could go to the mikveh and be metayed himself. When he enters into the Beis HaMikdash tamei, he's going to be chayav kares. Yotza sheretz she'ein lo yitara b'mikveh. The sheretz itself, which is the source of the tumah, you can't be mitayred in the mikveh. And regarding the sheretz itself, there's no kares if you bring it into the Beis HaMikdash. A very interesting thing. So dafka the sheretz itself, there's no problem. So should we say we have a raya to this? It says in the Braisa, prat lekli cheres. So the Braisa says, this pasuk says only a zachar and a keva that comes in when he's tamei, but this excludes a kli cheres. A earthenware keli that's tamei brought into the Beis HaMikdash, you're not chayav kares. Divrei Rabbi Yosi Aglili. So the Gemara explains what's unique about a kli cheres. My time, don't you think the reason is lav mishum de lesle tara b'mikveh? A kli cheres is something that you can't tovel in a mikveh. Once it gets tamei, you just have to break it. There's no other eitzah. So they see over here that something that cannot tovel in the mikveh could be brought into the Beis HaMikdash even when it's tamei. Says the Gemara, Loi, that's not the reason. Mi shenasa avatumeh. What this price is saying is only something that could become an avatumeh. You're not allowed to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. Yatza klicheres she'ein nasa avatumeh. A klicheres does not become an avatumeh. There's a very long Rashi here which explains the details and the source for this, why a klicheres cannot become an avatumeh. But that's the fact. A kli cheres is, on one hand, is very stringent, that once it becomes tummy, you can't tovel it in the mikveh, but it does not become an avatumah. So therefore, it can be brought into the Beis HaMikdash when it's tummy. Now the Gemara says, going back to our Mishnah. So our Mishnah was speaking about a sheretz in the Beis HaMikdash. So le'meketanoi, should we say that this over here that we speak about, whether you can bring a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash or not, should we say this is a machlokes tanoim? Sheretz shenimtza b'mikdash. What did it say in our Mishnah? You have a sheretz in the Beis HaMikdash. Kayin maitziyai behem yonei. So the first opinion is that the kayin should take it out with his garto shalei lishus esatumeh. So you shouldn't leave it there longer than necessary. Divrei Rabbi Yechanan ben Breike. Rabbi Yehuda says no. B'tzvas shel eitz, you should find tongs, or wooden tongs, maitziyai shalei lerabes esatumeh, and not in order not to make your gartel tumeh. Okay, so what do we see? What are they arguing about? Should you allow the sheretz to be in the Beis HaMikdash for an extra minute? My lav ba'kamifligi. Don't you think they're arguing about this point? The man damashloi lishay is the one that says don't leave it there for an extra second. Kesavar amachnes sheretz l'mikdash chayiv. He holds a sheretz in the Beis HaMikdash is a problem. You're going to be chayiv, so therefore don't leave it there for an extra second. Man damashloi l'rabbis, and the one that says don't be marbet tumeh, and therefore don't make your gartel tamei. You could leave it there for an extra minute. Kesavar hamachnes sheretz l'mikdash potter. He says there's no issue of leaving it there because a sheretz in the Beis HaMikdash is potter. That's still, it's not roy for the shchina and the presence. Rashi here says even if it's allowed to be brought in, but in a place where the hashros hashchina is in the Beis HaMikdash, it's not nice to have a sheretz over there. So they're taking it out. But really, you're potter. There's no chiyuv kares if the sheretz is there. So the Gemara, no, that's not the machlokes. Loi the kula alme chayiv. Everybody would agree that bringing a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash, you would be chayiv, and this is the way we paskin. And v'hacha b'haka miflegi. Over here, the argument in the Mishnah is as follows: Mar sava shuhu yetuma adif. One opinion says that when you leave it in the Beis HaMikdash longer, that's better, even though you're leaving it there longer, but you're not going to be metama your gartel. Umar sova afushet tumadif. And the other opinion says no. to be metami a gartel is better as long as you don't leave it there longer. In other words, it's a machlokes. These two things, what's better, to leave it there longer, to be metami a gartel? In the Sikha, the Hadran of the Rebbe on Eiruvin, the Rebbe says that the basis of this machlokes is the famous shaila whether kamos is machriya eichos or eichos is machriya kamos, quantity versus quality. Should you leave it there longer in time, or should you add more tumah and be metame your gartel? That's the way the Rebbe explains this machlokes here. Zok to Gemara weiter, Elo kahani tanoi. We can still seemingly say that this question of whether you're allowed to take a sheretz into the Beis HaMikdash is a machlokes in the following tanoim. The Tanan, in the second part of the Mishnah, what did it say? From where are you allowed to take it out of the Beis HaMikdash? So there was a machlokes in the Mishnah, right? In the first opinion of the Mishnah, what did Rav Shimon ben Nana say? Only from the Heichal, from the Ulam, between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, but in the Azara, you're not allowed to take it out on Shabbos. Then Rabbi Akiva said, no, you can take it out even from the Azara, from anywhere in the Beis HaMikdash. So what are they arguing about? My lav b'haka miflagi. Don't you think the argument is this point? The man damem Azara loi. Rab Shimon ben Nanis that says that sheretz on Shabbos, you're not allowed to take it out of the Azara. Why? Because savra machnas sheretz on Mikdash potter. He says the sheretz being there, you're potter. There's no chiyuv kara, so you could leave it there. You still should take it out of the heichal and the ulam because that's mamish in the presence of the shchina inside. But from the azara, you potter. Mandam and Mikul azara and Rab Kiva that says that you have to take it out of the entire azara. Kasavar chayiv. He says that taking out a sheretz would be chayiv. That's what it seems like. The pshat over here is. So the Gemara says again, there's no raya from the second part of the Mishnah to this as well. And the Gemara here brings a pasuk. Amar Rab Yechanan, no, shneim mikra echad darshu. The argument between Rab Shimon ben Nanas and Rab Akiva is based on the following pasuk. So the pasuk here says, "Vayavoyu akayanim." So this is in the times of the first Beis HaMikdash when they put a lot of avodah zarah into the Beis HaMikdash, and then they came to clean it all out. Vayavoyu akayanim lepnima Beis Hashem letayir. They came to clean out the avodah zarah. Vayetziu es kol hatumah shemotzu beheichal Hashem. They took out the tumah that they found inside the heichal lechatzar Beis Hashem. They brought it out into the azara. And vayekabelu haLeviim, and then the Leviim took it lohoitzi lenachal kidron chutza. And the Leviim took it out to Nachal Kidron. Okay, so what does it say over here? When they were cleaning out the Avodah Zarah of the Beis HaMikdash, the Koyanim took it out of the Heichal, brought it into the Azara, and then the Leviim brought it from the Azara out into the Nachal Kidron, into a river. Meaning the Leviim are not allowed to go inside the Heichal. Only the Koyanim are allowed to go into a Heichal. So we see there's a difference between the Heichal and the Azara. Says the Gemara, Mar Savar. So Rab Shimon ben Nanas holds, midishtani ba'azara b'leviim tumeh ba'azara leke. So because we see in this pasuk that the status of the azara is lower than the status of the heichel itself, the Leviim can enter into the azara, but they can't enter into the heichel itself. So therefore, b'negei to the tumeh as well, we say that the Isser of muktzah, that you're allowed to take out the sheretz, is different if it's in the heichel or it's in the azara. Okay. That's Rab Shimon ben Nanas' opinion. Amar Sova and Rabbi Akiva's opinion is ad heichel deloy efshe b'leviim mafki kainim. In the heichel itself, the Leviim are not allowed to enter, so there the kainim go in and take it out. Hashta de efshe b'leviim sulam etami kainim. In the azara, where the Leviim could go, so the kainim don't become any more tamei. In other words, the only reason the kainim would carry out the avodah zarah is because there's no other choice. Nobody else is allowed to go into the heichel itself to carry out this avodah zarah. In the azara, over there, the Leviim can take it out, so the Leviim would take it out. But there's no difference between the azara and the heichel. So to Gemara, now that we brought up the idea of entering into the heichal, into the azara, so the Gemara says as follows: Tana Rabbanan, Hakayel nechnasim beheichal. Everybody is allowed to enter into the heichal, live nice in order to build, l'sakein, to fix something in the structure of the Beis HaMikdash that's broken, u'lahaitzi es hatumah, and to take out any tumah that's there. Anybody's allowed to enter for that purpose. Mitzvah b'kainim, but the mitzvah is that it should be a kain. Ein sham kainim, if there's no kain available to fix, nechnasim leviim, the leviim enter. Ein sham leviim, nechnasim Yisraelim. Even Yisraelim are allowed to go into the. This includes even the kodesh hakadoshim. A yid, any yid is allowed to go into the kodesh hakadoshim if the wall has to be plastered. It actually says in the Mishnah once a year they would enter in to plaster the wall and to clean it and to fix it. Idi ve'idi tahayrin. So what does it say here? That the Yisraelim could go in, but only if they're tahayrin in. But tamein loy. If they're tamei, they can't enter. This is what it said in one braisa. Now the Gemara brings a different braisa. Amar Avona, Rav Kahana, which himself was a kohen, misayeya kahani. He assists the Kainim. Meaning, as we'll see, he's going to say that only Kainim are allowed to enter, but not Yisraelim. The Tani Rav Kahana learned in Abraisa, Mitoich Shanema, Achala Pareches Lo Yavai, Yachala Ye Kainim, Bali Mumin, Echnasim Ben Olam Ulamas Beyach, Lasitz Rikuye Pachim. I would think that Kainim that are Bali Mumin, that can't do the Avaida, I would think they also are not allowed to enter to make the Rikuye Pachim. What's Rikuye Pachim? Rashi says it was gold-plated walls or something that was gold-plated in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. She says, Tassen Shal Zahav, that they would cover the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So I would think that Kayin and Bali Mumin can't enter. Talmud Loima Ach Cholak. Ach is a miyut that for fixing purposes they're allowed to go in. Mitzvah betmimim. The mitzvah is that it should be Kayinim that are not a Balmum, Tomim. Ein Shom Tmimim, Nachnas and Bali Mumin. Even a Balmum could go in. Mitzvah betahirin. It should be a Kayin which is Tahir. Ein Shom Tahirin, Nachnas and Tmein. Even if you Tommy, you can go in. But Idi ve'idi Kayinim. Only Kayanim should enter to fix the Kodesh HaKadoshim or anything inside the Beis HaMikdash. Kayanim in, Yisraelim loy, but a Yisrael should not go in. So here he says different than the previous Braisa. In the previous Braisa it said that even Yisraelim could go in. If you have two people that could do the fixing work inside the Beis HaMikdash, who's a better option? A Kayin which is Tomei or a Kayin that's a Balmum? Eizemen nichnas. So there's an argument here. The person that's Tomei enters. The ha'ishteri ba'avedas tzibur, because I find there is a situation where a Kayin Tomei is allowed to do aveda even while he's Tomei. When's that? When the whole tzibur is Tomei. So therefore, it's better that a Kayin which is Tomei should go in. Rabbi Lazar says, Balmum nichnas, the Kayin which is a Balmum should enter. What's the advantage of the Kayin which is a Balmum? The ha'ishteri ba'achilas kachim, because the Kayin which is a Balmum is allowed to eat kachim. So therefore, he's on a higher level, and he should enter inside the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, we'll make the siyum in Mitzvah Shem soon.